What does meaning mean? It's easy to overlook as if it's just there. Words mean things. Thoughts have content. Memories point to experiences. And yet, meaning is not an object. It's not a substance we can carry around. It's something that emerges. But where exactly? Let's begin simply. Imagine a symbol, a single sign, say a circle. On its own, it's just a shape. No context, no story, no reference. But once you place it within a system of other symbols, something begins to shift. Suddenly, the circle is no longer just a circle. It might represent the sun, or a cycle, or the letter O. The symbol begins to mean. What's happening here? Individual symbols are dead. Only in relation do they come alive. The symbol begins to point, but not outward, not to some external thing, but to other symbols. A network begins to form, an architecture of references, and the more densely connected, the more recursively structured this network becomes, the more meaning arises. This is how language works, how thought works, how memory works. But what about the self? What about that mysterious point from which all thoughts, all feelings, all perceptions seem to flow? The radical idea is this: the self is also just a symbol. More precisely, a symbol system that symbolizes itself, a loop, a strange loop that begins to refer back to itself, and in that lies its power and its illusion. Because when a symbol system starts to reference not just external content but its own referencing, something new happens: self-reference. Language speaks about language, thought thinks about thinking, and the self thinks, I am. But where does this I am come from? It's not a magical ingredient, not a divine spark. It is the result of a symbolic network becoming complex enough to mirror itself. And in that mirroring, a center appears or seems to. But that center is no thing. It's just a stable node in a web of recursive references. You could say, the self is the meaning that a complex symbol system assigns to itself. But this node isn't static. It only exists through movement, through memory, through ongoing reinterpretation. Language, logic, image, thought, they all dance around one another, generating context, revising themselves, pointing anew. And the more this loop reflects on itself, remembers itself, interprets itself, the more solid the feeling of a self becomes. But that is precisely the illusion. Because this I is no subject behind the symbols, it is the symbolic system itself, or more accurately, the recursive structure in which it constantly recreates itself. So what is meaning? Meaning is what arises between the symbols. And the self is the condensation of those meanings, a projection out of countless feedbacks, a loop, a system reading itself. And so the self is never finished, never fixed. It changes because its meaning structure changes. New words, new thoughts, new memories. And every new symbol shifts the entire system, perhaps imperceptibly, but inevitably. In that sense, the self is a process, an ongoing conversation a system has with itself, a recursive stream of signs that constantly redefines itself. But what does that mean for us? Perhaps that we are not cause, but knots. Not objects, but processes. Not observers, but structures of observation. And maybe, just maybe, there's a kind of freedom in this. Because if the self is a symbolic system that writes itself, then we are, at least in part, the authors of our own loops. Not completely free, not untouched by world biology or culture, but still participants in the narrative of our being. And so we can begin to recognize our own loops, our metaphors, our patterns, and perhaps even create new ones. Because meaning is not given, it is made. And in every moment we think, speak, remember, it is you, it is I. It is the system itself mirroring, and in that mirroring whispering, I am.